Hello, my name is Naaman Geda. I am the Head of Investments and Advisory at Afri-Trade Investments, and I'm honored to be included in this year's list of top 40 under 40. Thank you. I actually studied architecture in Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And while in university, I was very active in the civil society space. So I was part of what we call the GCAP. The GCAP is the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, which brought together the high NGOs, so Oxfam, ActionAid, the United Nations Millennium Campaign. That was the precursor to the SDG partnerships that are there today. So I studied architecture, I practiced architecture, I worked with the Symbion Group, which then was probably the largest design services firm in Eastern Central Africa. And it's very likely that a lot of the hospitality places you've been to, I had a hand in designing that. If we went through a list now, I would be sure that out of 5, probably 3 I was involved in. And then had a move to Southern Africa, just at the advent of the World Cup, just before the World Cup began. I was headhunted and I moved out to South Africa to work on some of the projects and the opportunities there. And I moved to a company called DSA, David Sebe Architects, as an architect. While I was there, there was something that I noticed about the economy of South Africa. So a lot of the economy, about 80% of it is in, or was then in private sector, private hands. And the stratification of the South African economy dictated that a lot of that capital was really sitting in, historically in white hands. So then South Africa instituted what you call the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Program, where they were trying to get to some level of equalization or empowerment of the indigenous black communities. So the system there required that you do contract participation goals, and then when you're tendering and when you're allocating projects, that equalization is achieved. And so I did go to work for a firm that was historically black-owned, and a lot of the work that would come would be on government projects, and the 20% that was left roughly in the private sector. I convinced my then employer to look at this differently, and I told him that the one thing that people think about when you think South Africa, if I was to ask that question, there's 3 things that would come up. Everyone will say apartheid, everyone will say Nelson Mandela, those kinds of things. And that is important. South Africa is the one country in the world where everybody, despite their political differences, are willing to rally behind and support. So it took me about a year and a half. But finally, at the age of 59, I managed to get my then boss to travel out of South Africa, live with me, and go out into the world and seek for opportunities, and now position ourselves as a private sector solution provider. And that changed the conversation, because from the tendering and getting into databases and trying to secure work, we moved to somebody who's providing a solution. And so the clients were now ready to listen. And so that's where my journey began. We went into a global fundraise, traveled in different parts of the world, and then I utilized my experience in working in the banking space, because at some point I was doing some work in KCB, and I also worked for an NGO called CLAN that was helping underprivileged children. And I leveraged my experience and my understanding of the financing or investment sector from there to sort of package projects and be able to interest investors in supporting the projects that we were pursuing. So we traveled across the world. We actually did secure interest in the United States from one of the outfits out of Wall Street. The transaction did not go through for different reasons, but when we were done with that entire process, the principal of that particular organization took an interest in me and what I was doing, and then requested me to join their business and head the African business and help them grow. And that is how I ended up at Renovatio Capital, where I was for nearly 10 years before I joined Afri-Trade Investments, where I am today. I'm truly honored. You know, I'm used to working and not getting any accolades for anything. So for me, this is a humbling experience. Unexpected, and I truly am privileged, yes. So I think for me, my contribution has been to solving problems, and solving problems in a way that has a lasting positive impact. And I've highlighted from our days in South Africa where we set, number one, we created standards for the built environment in terms of the documentation that was needed, worked in the new generation prototype prisons in making them, moving away from calling them prisons to correctional facilities, and moving from a force to a service, to coming back this side and engaging in projects that create employment opportunities, to then now coming to the point where we are now trying to address serious social challenges in Kenya today, like the labor question, and trying to intervene policy-wise and otherwise to be able to then get people to work together towards making a lasting impact in the society and in people's lives. We need to not shy away from talking to people who've gone before us. And I always say, respect the bricklayers. They've been there before. They've learnt a lot. When I was young, I was really an upstart. I would really make a lot of noise and say, these old people don't know what they're doing and what they're saying. But over time, I've come to learn that experience counts. So number one, don't be afraid to talk to people who have gone ahead of you, people who you consider influential and have had an impact in society and have made an impression on you. Have that mentorship program, have that mentorship relationship going, have those conversations with them and allow for them to speak into your life. Expose yourself, speak to many people, look at the sectors where people have been successful, speak to their journey, and you'll realize something very quickly, that it's one thing to be competent, but it's another thing to be passionate. Now, to my point, have your competency and build your competency, which is very important for you to succeed, but have a passion for what you do. Because the passion is what is going to determine whether you're going to be impactful in the direction that you go with what you want to do. So that would be my real encouragement to everybody. And I mean, don't be afraid to fail. It's also okay to fail. Fail forward. Fail forward. You fail, accept that you failed, learn from your mistakes, and then move on. Don't be embarrassed that you fell or that you did something wrong. Accept, learn from it, and move on. And in that way, you'll also have a story to tell, because it's a journey that we are all walking. The impact journey is not a journey that is a day. It's a journey that is for a lifetime.